Ready? And begin. Seconds used. One minute.
In the classic novel Crime and Punishment, one of the key themes is the impact of unrealistic worldviews upon the nature of the human psyche. The main character begins the story with an unrealistic worldview that there are higher people and lower people, and thus takes an action based on this unrealistic worldview by murdering one of the lower people, with drastic consequences for his sanity and ability to cope in reality. That author of that novel comments similarly on this idea when he says realists do not fear the results of their study. Now, what the Russian author Fyodor Dostoevsky is trying to say here is that realistic worldviews are the most superior, because ultimately they are the only ones that are free to learn from their studies instead of having to fear them. We can wholeheartedly agree for two reasons. First, realistic worldviews are freed from denial, and second, they alone can adapt without destruction. When Raskolnikov is faced in the story with a number of situations that cause him to question whether or not his worldviews are acceptable, he ultimately causes himself to deny those evidences, whether it be the persecuting detective Pyotr Petrovich or other plot elements that are somewhat problematic to him. He denies that they are even problems to preserve his worldview, demonstrating that realistic worldviews are superior because they are freed from denial. But we can explore this more meaningfully as we delve through various examples. The first being the Galileo's heliocentric model of the universe, and second, minimal leap theory. First, though, Galileo. The Roman Catholic Church did not accept Galileo's initial proposition of a heliocentric solar system. Why? Because they had an unrealistic view of the alignment between a geocentric model and being compatible with scriptures. Because of this unrealistic worldview, they were forced to deny new evidence saying that a heliocentric model of the solar system was more appropriate. Not because it actually threatened their thing, Catholicism still survives to today, but because they had an unrealistic appreciation of how they were connected. We can explore this idea further by showing how minimal leap theory interacts with this idea. Minimal leap theory is the idea that to persuade someone, you need to have the minimal leap from their current position. A realistic worldview is one in which you simply accept that the world is rational, and thus, any new idea conforms strictly to that idea because it gives you a better understanding and explanation of the world around you. However, unrealistic worldviews hinge on a single idea, and thus, if an idea is going to try to persuade them away from it, there's only so far that it can persuade them, because instead of conforming to reality being consistent, they conform to a single idea, which they will not stray very far away from, thus showing that realistic worldviews are superior because they alone are freed from denial. Ultimately, Raskolnikov ends his story by changing his entire worldview when Sonia, another character, causes him to realize that his former suppositions were entirely false, ultimately demonstrating how that his new lifestyle is entirely separate from the other. The old Raskolnikov has been destroyed, thus showing that only realistic worldviews can adapt without destruction. Let's explore this a bit deeper. First, through the American Party, and then through the book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. First, though, the American Party was an American nationalist party, which posited that immigrants were out to destroy America, among various other policy planks of their platform. However, this one tenet was huge and caused them to have an unrealistic worldview. However, this idea had to be challenged when immigrants came to America and demonstrated themselves to be kind and community-focused, thus causing that central plank to collapse, and because they were unable to adapt without being destroyed, the American Party no longer exists. Similarly, though, is the book The Structure of Scientific Revolutions from the 1960s. The book posits that a scientific revolution or scientific advance is not through progressive improvements on theories, but instead rests solely on the concept of trusting in a paradigm of a field. These paradigms, however, are unrealistic in and of themselves because they are not true. However, science itself is a realistic worldview, so that while science itself persists, these small worldviews, for example, that electricity was like water and flowed from place to place, are abandoned as we gain new idea, thus showing that unrealistic worldviews cannot adapt without being destroyed. Returning to today's quotation from Fyodor Dostoevsky, we see realists do not fear the results of their study. Ultimately, we have seen that this shows that realistic worldviews are superior because, one, they are freed from denial, and next, they can adapt without being destroyed. We are left with considering Raskolnikov's fate, that it is best to have a most realistic worldview conforming to the true facts that we can find.